Good afternoon. On your screen is a view of our Fusion 2 rocket standing at Pad 01B at the National Space Center in Eurasia. We're currently just under 9 minutes away from liftoff of Fusion 2 carrying multiple payloads to space. We're carrying 4 SpoopyX satellites into low Drew orbit today and the Spectra ALM-1 mission. SpoopySat is a network of satellites based in low Drew orbit, designed to observe weather patterns and monitor wildlife. The satellites are also capable of mapping Drew. This will be our 4th mission supporting a SpoopyX mission, making them our most loyal customer. Thank you to SpoopyX for entrusting us with launching their satellites today. The second payload hitching a ride today is Spectra ALM-1. It was built by Photonics and it is a technology demonstrator for a future space station. It has power systems and is fitted with docking ports. Thank you to Photonics for choosing us to launch their payload today. Fusion 2 has progressed smoothly through the countdown today. Propellant loading started just under 50 minutes ago and the payloads were loaded with their propellants before integration. You may have noticed scorch markings on the first stage on your screen. This is because the booster flying today has been flown previously. It supported the CSS-1 mission in January this year. If you were looking closely, you also would have noticed that one of the airless engines looks a little different. Today we are reflying an airless engine for the very first time. It'll be flying with extra data sensors and a new protective nozzle cover. We performed a static fire test on the pad with this engine just over a week ago. We're coming up on the end of propellant loading in just 30 seconds. Once we've finished that, we'll begin prepping for liftoff. The strong back will be unlatched from the rocket and the tanks will begin to pressurize ahead of flight.
Propellant loading complete.
Now with today's flight, we've made a couple changes to the flight profile. The first major change is our booster landing location. LZ-1 has been moved into Pad 01B. This will allow for a quick rollback into a brand new hangar just outside the pad, for quicker turnaround times. We've also made the landing burn more aggressive. It'll last for around 20 seconds and will start with 8 engines before moving down to 2. Due to the experimental nature of these booster landings, teams can decide to abort and land in the water. Safety is a top priority for both Druids and our ground infrastructure. The last major change on this flight is improved communications equipment for the second stage of Fusion 2. This will allow for live video feed throughout the entire coast phase of today's mission, so stick around for some cool views later.
strongback retract has started.
And right on schedule, the strongback has begun to move away from the vehicle. This allows Fusion 2 to have better clearance during liftoff and avoid the airless engines roasting any critical components.
Pressurizing to flight pressures.
The propellant tanks onboard Fusion 2 are now getting ready for flight. You'll still see some venting as we increase pressure in the tanks slowly, rather than rapidly. A few days ago, the Lunar Rock 2 mission began its return from Luna. The spacecraft collected 50 kilograms of rocks and soil during its 27-day mission. The spacecraft broke numerous records, including first liftoff and landing of a spacecraft on another celestial body, fastest and hardest re-entry survived by a spacecraft, and the first return of rock samples from another celestial body. Fusion Space is super proud to have worked on this mission and will happily share samples with other agencies. If you wish to study some lunar rock samples, then you can contact us and provide us with information on what you'd like to do with these samples and how much you will need. Fusion 2 continues to progress through the countdown as expected. The range is green and the weather is also green. The vehicle's onboard flight computer will take over from mission control at T-1 minute and we'll see the water deluge activate 10 seconds before liftoff.
Flight computer enabled.
Go for launch. 15, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Liftoff. Go Fusion 2. Go SpoopySat. Go Spectra. Vehicle is pitching downrange.
ELS chamber pressures nominal.
Seconds into flight. Fusion 2 is on its way to space. We've got 11 of the 12 airless engines lit. Next up is max Q.
Max Q.
We're hearing all good call-outs so far. The vehicle is on a good trajectory. In just a minute we'll see the shutdown of those airless engines on the first stage. The second stage will separate and make its way to space using the single airless vac engine, and the booster will start a boost back to make its way back to the launch complex.
MECO. Stage separation.
ELS vac ignition.
Booster boost back startup.
Excellent views from those onboard cameras. Fusion 2 is on its way to space and we've got a booster on its way back home.
Fairing separation.
Boost back shutdown.
Booster is no-go for return.
That's a little unfortunate, we've just had a no-go for booster return. This means we'll now be attempting a soft splashdown away from the launch site, but that's okay. We'll figure out the problem and fix it on our next flight.
ELS vac chamber pressures nominal.
The second stage continues to ascend nominally. We'll be coming up on the shutdown of that airless vac engine shortly.
Seco.
Nominal parking orbit.
Beautiful views of the payloads on that deployment stack there. Now that the second stage is in its parking orbit, we can focus our attention on the booster, which is currently going for a soft splashdown. Just earlier we polled no go for return.
Booster is transonic. Booster landing burn startup.
And here we go, we've got all 8 engines. Down to 2, into the water.
Landing burn shutdown.
Booster has splashed down.
And a successful splashdown of our booster. Our teams will now begin the process of safing and returning the first stage to land. We'd like to ask anyone in the area to please stay away from the first stage. It is a hazardous area and is currently restricted to the public. But with that, we'll go on a short break for the next 12 minutes. We'll return for the second burn and payload deployment. Please enjoy the views. Welcome back. We're just about to perform a second burn with the airless vac engine. This burn will only last around 10 seconds. If you have just joined us, Fusion 2 successfully lifted off just over 18 minutes ago and made it into a nominal parking orbit. The booster performed an ocean splashdown abort due to a currently unknown issue, but teams are actively working on safing the vehicle and prepping to tow it back to shore. Despite the disappointment from the first stage, the primary mission has been very successful. Hopefully in just 30 seconds we'll see a good burn and then payload deployment from the second stage.
airless vac ignition. SIC-02.
Nominal orbital insertion.
And there was that relight and shut down. We also heard a nominal orbital insertion call out. This is wonderful news. This means we'll see the payload start to deploy in just under a minute. Once all the payloads are deployed, the second stage will begin procedures to deorbit itself. We don't like leaving unnecessary debris in space.
SpoopySat Deployment 1. SpoopySat Deployment 2. SpoopySat Deployment 3. SpoopySat Deployment 4. Spectra ALM-1 technology demonstrator deployed.
And that will bring today's webcast to a close. Thank you once again to SpoopX and Photonix for entrusting us with their payloads on Fusion 2. We'd like to congratulate the Fusion space teams on another successful mission. And we'd like to thank all of you for joining us today. You can stay up to date on our Twitter page for more updates. Have a great remainder of your day, and we hope to see you next time.